Alright, so what we got up here is a coyote that is ready to be fleshed. And so what has been done so far is it's been hung on the gambrel, it's been brushed out of any big burrs or whatever's in the fur, skinned, and then washed. And it's in the drying process right now. I was just talking to Brian, down here on the bottom of the feet are still a little bit wet, but it's not going to be too bad. It won't be bad enough for me to not be able to flesh it out. But I'm just going back through it again, and I'm using my hands to really feel in there to see if there's anything I missed. Sometimes the combs, they'll go over stuff that you would normally feel with your hands. So the biggest thing I'm doing is just trying to make sure there's any matted hair, any cockabirds, anything that would actually cause a problem when I'm fleshing, because what will happen is that'll ball up. When we take that fleshing knife and go over it, you just cut a big old hole under your hide. I know this because I've done it. So I just go back through, make sure I've got everything I need out of it, and then we're ready to put it onto the fleshing board. Alright, so now we got the hide over here on the fleshing board. Just putting some gloves back on. It's not that they really help in any fashion except for not getting cut. It's kind of a big one. I use a scalpel, just a cheap one that I bought. Actually, I think that one was given to me, but you can use a Havilon. Anything that's got a smaller blade on it. I even have, right here, a broken Havilon blade that I had. And so I'll even use this. I don't like a long handle when I'm doing some of the trim work. Sometimes I'll get into a place where it's just, I can't get the head to stick, I don't have a big enough vice grip, I don't feel comfortable taking the knife to, or taking the fleshing knife to it. I'll actually use a smaller razor blade of some sort or a sharp knife and get in there and start cutting that off. And the reason why I like it small is I've got a lot more control over it. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this and flip it inside out now. So it's going to be fur side in, skin side out. It's been hanging since this morning. I was hanging half the day, actually 3/4 of the day in my basement, and the rest of the afternoon / evening here in my garage, just airing out. You want to get that fur as dry as you can before you put on the fleshing beam. Another way, and this actually was brought up earlier, but is actually you can freeze your pelt a little bit to get that fat frozen. It does make skinning a little bit easier, but I don't have that type of time to really do that and spread it out for that long, so I do it right away. Once I've got it put up on the hung up to dry, as soon as it's ready to go, as soon as that fur's dry, I'll start skinning right away. So after a while, I kind of know how long it's going to take before my skin's ready. And even behind Brian right now shooting the video, we just got a coyote that we finished up. And so with that one, what we'll end up doing is we're going to let it dry. And the skin right now is super wet. You can actually see some of the glycering of it too. Is when I start pressing this, I want it to be a little bit dry, but not too dry, because we'll actually finish it out. So it'll be fur side out, like these ones right here on the wall. These are finished ones, they're dried. And so you let it dry a little bit, it gets a good form on it. And then before I turn it fur side out, I'll take borax, which is a laundry care product. I'll rub it on the face, up in the nose, down the bottom on the tail. Just to make sure I get everything dry so that way it doesn't rot out. It's pretty easy, it's just a tedious process. So yeah, we're going to start it over here on this next coyote, and it should take us a little bit of time, but hopefully, and it's nice too because over here, this is a coyote that I actually had snared that I was afraid that was caught up on a fence, but what it turned out to be was a bullet hole. It got shot. We'll show on the other side. What we'll do is we'll actually sew this up, and so I'll show you guys how I sew my pelts. You know, at times I poked holes through them in the bad spots where you don't want holes, and so for me what I do is I sew them back up, and on a finished pelt you really can't tell the difference. So the knife I use, it's called a Green English. Works for me. It's got a sharp or duller side on this side and the inside on the concave side, or convex side, I guess. I don't know. Brian, help me out here.
I don't even know what convex means.
Okay, so the curve, the inner curve.
It's been a while since I've been in school.
Yeah, this is a sharper side, so I might use it a little bit on the coyote. I doubt it. I never have. Or if I have, it's usually on the face, and I don't use it often because it's too sharp for a coyote. Coyote is strong. They got strong skin, but they got thin skin too. So one thing about fleshing is every animal is different. So did a coyote earlier, this coyote could be totally different. This coyote could be a breeze. This coyote could just be a major pain. I mean, we're having all sorts of problems trying to get this fat and gristle everything off. Nice thing about coyotes is it does not have to be flawless. A little bit of the skin is okay. There's just not a lot of fat on it, but you want to make sure you get as much of that fat off, as much of the back gristle off. You want a clean looking pelt. It's just taking pride in, I guess, but not all fur buyers want that or expect that. So we're just going to make sure we get any meat and any fat off. This is our main goal. So we'll go ahead and get going. The pitch of how you're pushing, the height of your board, there's a lot of things that go into factor. I'm definitely not saying this is the right height for me, but this is what I do, and this is what I've used. I bought one of these brackets right here. It's a fold away, so it folds up and goes up tall and it's out of the way. I can park my truck in here actually. I got that. I think actually Minnesota brand Trapline products actually sell a full kit. I don't know, but that's where I got the bracket and the board from. That's where I got the knife from too, but there's a ton of different places that sell them. So, but yeah, we'll go ahead and get going. One thing when we get down here, I'll just give you a heads up. This was a male coyote, and so with this male coyote, usually what guys will do is actually cut out around the exit hole of the coyote's male part. And so you can do that, but I don't know what I'm going to do with these. I don't know if I'm going to sell them as wall hangers or if I'm going to sell them to a fur buyer or what I'm going to do. So I usually leave it on, just trying to get them as much fur as possible. You don't have to do that. If you're selling to a market, you probably actually already know what you're doing. So anyways, we'll go ahead and get going.
Listen.
Alright, so got one of the sides done here for the most part. What I'm going to do is I've actually got the pecker hole that I got to cut out, and then it's just going to be a good reason why I'm going to show you this, why I have a scalpel. So the first part is just down here. You want to be careful. You don't want to use a sharp knife on much of your pelt at all, because that's just when accidents happen. So you're going to see two holes here. Those are actually nipples. It's not uncommon to puncture those. They want to see a white belly coyote, but I don't know if they necessarily care if there's little pinpricks in there from that. So all I'm doing is I'm just pulling this skin, or pulling this gristle dash fat dash connective tissue, whatever it is, and I'm just pulling it up. And what it's going to do is it's going to keep on separating from the outside skin. So again, this is one of the reasons why people just cut out when they're skinning it. They just cut it straight out, but I just don't know what I'm going to be doing yet with this, so I going to make it as finished as possible. So there's that skin, there's that, and then I'll show you right here too. When you're down at the end of the pelt, you can actually keep taking the knife and keep pushing it. But one thing you'll see on my board are these little nicks right here, and that's for me with the wrong angle on the knife. So what I do to compensate for that is I pull it all the way down, and the stuff that I just can't get off, I just keep pulling and keep cutting very carefully on the edge. This is the belly side, so I'm not too worried about if I do get a little hole in it. It's not going to be the end of the world, but at the same time I want to make sure I'm doing the best I can and not ruining anything. Alright, so we just want to show you that real quick, and to get back to this, keep on fleshing her out. You can see how this right here, I'm not sure if it shows up in the camera, but this right here is what we call green belly. And so this green belly right here just means that the guts were still too warm, And so I got to make sure I get this all out, get this all clean. This is another reason why I don't like to freeze my pellets before I flesh them. It's just because it's just additional time, and that's just more time for this to go bad. And so what will happen is when they get back from the tannery, is right here in the belly, and this is the prime spot for a coyote, is their hair will slip off and there's barely any hair there. So again, it's not the end of the world because it's the belly, but to get the most money for your pelt, you want everything to be good. So keep on working here. Alright, so we've got it fleshed for the most part. Everything's good. Everything meets my satisfactory. We sewed up a hole, an old wound that it had. So that's all sewed up. And so the next thing, we're just going to grab the stretching board and put her back on there and we'll be ready to rock and roll. Usually 12 to 24 hours is about the drying time that you have before you flip it. It all depends on your weather. Out here, we don't have a whole lot of humidity, so it's kind of nice for drying pelts because they dry out pretty quick. But what will happen is in the morning, if it's not ready, I'll take it inside in the morning, and then at lunchtime it should be ready to rock and roll. Yeah, one of the concerns you may have is when do you flip it? How do you know? We have talked about that a little bit, but for me, the way I know is on the outside of the... So on the outside of the board here, this is where it's going to dry. Where I've had problems by letting it get too dry is, first of all, it's tough to flip the arms back inside, and then on this outside edge will dry out on me, and then when I go to flip the hide, when I start to turn it back inside out, I'll actually get some small tears on these edges, and that's not good. It's going to decrease the value of your pelt. But yeah, this one was done this morning as well, right, this evening, and it's still really wet, you know, so it's not nowhere near where it needs to be. Don't worry about the ears when you're checking the dryness. Another big call out too is using these adjustable boards. These adjustable boards are nice because you can actually get the right fit for the animal. And so how I put this on, we'll just shoot this too, is you got this. I always put the tail side, this is the front side, excuse me. So this is where I'm going to be putting the belly at, is right here, where I can adjust this. So I'm going to loosen these up a little bit so that way they're ready to move. This is the tail part, that can be tightened down. There we go. Get that all pulled down. One of the first things I do is always tack the nose down. One thing I've learned as well is these adjustable boards are great because you don't have, there's very few problems with taking the hides off, because you can stretch it out, and then when you want to take it off you can collapse it. If you're going to use a solid board, which they do sell, I learned this from a mistake too, or the hard way, is you got to make sure you put a wedge in there, and so they sell the wedges for whatever board you got. If you don't, it's a really big pain trying to get pelts off. Last year we had to use ratchet straps and vice grip and table clamp and everything else to try to get some badger pelts off that dry too tight. And so absolutely, if there's one thing, if you're ever going to get into fleshing, spend the money on the boards. I mean, just get adjustable boards, just do it. I don't care what anybody else out there has to say. Just adjustable boards are worth the money. Absolutely. So, and another thing is you don't want to get this nose folded too far over on the tip of this. What I try to do is just right on the tip, just top of the lips or right there. I've just found it's easier to get them off the board that way. That's the only reason why I say that. I use these push pins, get them from a trapping supply. They're more heavy duty versus what you can get at Walmart or whatever else. They do make other ones that have got bigger backs on them. I got these, they're aluminum. They work fine. The bigger back ones are a little bit easier to put in. some of these, on some of the boards, depending on how you're hitting the wood or whatever, it gets actually pretty difficult to push them in. But so I'll put one up here on this side. I'll take another one. You don't necessarily have to put two in, but I do because I've got plenty of push pins and plenty of free time. The bottom jaw, you can kind of see it dried out a little bit. It's not necessarily the greatest thing, but for this coyote, it's not that big of a deal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tack this up so that way it dries a little bit better. Most times, if I know I'm going to be selling everything to a fur buyer, I'll usually just cut that bottom lip right off. Okay, so now we got this. And so the reason why I like to put the belly side on this right here, on this side, especially with the wing nuts, is because I can see how straight I am. If I'm on the back side, the only way I can really tell is on the shoulders, on how they're kind of sitting. But when I'm trying to get on the board, I want to get as perfect as possible. So I got these loosened up. Just kind of know from experience with these, using these boards this year already. When I'm stretching it out, it's about halfway. And so the thing you want to kind of avoid for a coyote, this doesn't have too bad. This was a bigger male. This was a 67-inch male, I think. But obviously, tip the nose to the tip of the tail, because I'm not that tall. But for fur buying, they actually just go from the base of the tail. But I don't know. Everything I've always measured has always been with the tail, so I just keep doing that. But so we got this. But you want to make sure you don't have a triangle or a TP going. That's not desirable. So what I could do, because as you can see down here, I mean there's plenty of room for me to stretch. Like I've got more ground I can stretch on this. But the thing you don't want, again, is that triangle. You want to kind of make it as kind of perpendicular as you can, straight up and down. But you still, I mean, you got to stretch it out. That's just the way it goes. So now that backside's fine, I'm not too worried about that. Got the front arms. I just want to make sure that they're somewhat. You can tell by looking at the ears facing it directly straight on too, how that looks. If it's not perfect, try to get it fit as perfect as you possibly can. And you go down here. And this white stuff you might see in here is borax. Like my hands are really greasy, I'll just take my tub of borax I've got. When I flip it back inside out, or first side out, before I take it off the board, I'll actually take a lot of this borax right here and just rub it on there. It helps dry it up. Behind Brian, he's got the coon skins I did. And so you can see the borax on there. It just helps dry it out. Don't have to worry about any rotting or anything. But I don't put that on here, and the reason why is that this is not how the pelt finishes. The pelt finishes with the fur out, and this borax will just soak up too much of the skin moisture. So we'll take this guy, got the leg, so I'll go down here on the leg, stretch her out. And now stretching it out, you're not looking to overstretch it, but you're not looking to have it loose. So, and again, you're trying to make the back, like I can tell right here, actually this is drying out. So this spot doesn't take as long. And then even at these armpits, that's one thing you'll notice too, is when you go to flip it, underneath these armpits, it's still going to be wet. So that's just something to keep in mind. Usually everything else is pretty dried out, or somewhat dried out in the process. But I'll always take borax and put it underneath the armpits, no matter what. Even if I think it's going to be fine, like I always will. And then same thing with the cartilage in the ears. If you don't take the cartilage in the ears, it takes forever for it to dry out. The skin's fine, the skin's finished, skin's ready to be sold, but the ears are still a little flappy because the cartilage hasn't dried out. So that's one reason why I cut it out as well. If it was to be taxidermy or anything like that, I'd leave all that in there. And be very careful when I'm actually skinning it around the face with the tear ducts and everything else. So, but it's not for that. This is for either the market or a bedspread. So I'm just going to stretch it out to how I normally do it. And then on this belly side, I could tack it down right here, but it's not necessarily worth it. The belly down here is not going to be that good anyways. The fur's not going to be plush. Farther up, it isn't too bad, so there is some uses for it, but for this situation, I'm not going to worry about it. Flip it over on the back side, and then you got the base of the tail, and then I got the two corners, and that's where the hips are. So I'm going to put my pins in there, and then stretch it down. Alright, got that done. Now I'm going to tack the tail down to the tail board. And the reason why you do this is it won't dry out if you don't. And then when I do take it off the board to flip the fur, I'll actually put a ton of borax in there just to make sure. But I alternate the pins so that way the hide stays open as much as possible. So I'll go one on the right side, then one staggered down the left side, and then vice versa. So that's that. She is ready to air dry out.
Let us know if you have any questions in the comments. Thank you.